Hey, y'all. It's Monica. Welcome to the second half of my conversation with Stella and Jim Lee on the lines in the sky. The more I reflect on what Jim has to say, the more I want to know, and the more I wonder how much simple greed contributes to much of the ills plaguing us in this world today, and how much of our theorizing is fostered to lead us away from holding bad actors accountable for their recklessness, for their deception. I mean, this was definitely food for thought. And Jim really puts his money where his mouth is. You can find all of his smoking guns, all his evidence, all his research, all his historical work, up to the minute news, and so much more on his websites, climateviewer.com and climateviewer.org. And to get the bottom of everything from chemtrails to weather modification, past, present, and future, just dig in there. And if you want to hear more from Stella, we barely let her get a word in edgewise. Check her out every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on WTF Forum Live on YouTube. Talk about a fun chat. I'll put all those links in the description here on YouTube, as well as in the show notes at monicaperezshow.com. And I hope you enjoy this concluding hour of our conversation with Jim Lee, and co-hosted by the lovely Stella from Down Under.
The bottom line is these are metal nanoparticle burning machines. I just got some recent numbers. I'm not going to mess with them because when you start talking about 50 times 10 to the 15 number of particles, on takeoff, just on takeoff, we're talking about astronomically large numbers of particles. But 10,000 per cubic centimeter in the stratosphere is insane amount of pollution. Now, is it depopulation? Well, I've read multiple studies that say, yes, the pollution coming from planes has directly been linked to the deaths of X number of people. It's always got at least 4 to 5 zeros in it. So, yes, pollution from planes, the black carbon, the metals, the sulfuric acid, sulfur dioxide, all of these things are killing people now. They're also whitening the sky. That is geoengineering. They're also making clouds. Why? Hygroscopic seeding. It is a water attracting, ice freezing, ice nucleating particle. So it is a cloud condensation nuclei by definition, and in the right conditions will fan out and block out the sky. So then they go, but what about the on-off chemtrails, Jim? What about the grids in the sky, Jim?
Yeah.
And
Jim.
And I go, have you actually looked at, lots of people, they'll shoot their little video. I got my video, man. Did you do a flight tracker? So the other day, I'm gonna grab you. Can I grab?
I do the flight tracker, and sometimes they're not on it.
Can I? Yeah, can I have 30 seconds?
Yeah, thank
you. Yeah. In fact, while he's doing that, I was just doing flight tracker this morning, and I tracked a particular plane because we had a beautiful sunrise, which I did photograph, and the rest of it was clear blue. And I saw a plane going over, and I thought, oh, I'll use my flight tracker thing because I've only just got it. And the AR thing, and of course, it took me a moment to turn on my location thing because I always have that turned off. So by the time that happened, the plane was already. Then I realised there's this little tiny short contrail, and as it turned out, the plane was obviously descending at that time because it was coming into Brisbane to land. So I thought, there we are, perfect example.
What was it? What was the flight? Was it a commercial flight?
Yes, a passenger flight. So it's
because I've also seen them,
and it went through a band of cooler air, I guess. So that's what caused the.
I've seen where it's not on the flight tracker, and then my understanding is.
But you're on Flight Radar 24, right?
Maybe I'm on I was on Flight Tracker.
Okay, that's crap. Go to ADSB.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, go to ADSBexchange.com. ADS globe.adsbexchange, all one word, ADSB exchange.
.com?
They do not filter out military flights.
Oh, cool.
The other thing you can do is buy yourself a Nikon Coolpix P900.
Oh, they're unreal.
And this sucker right here, it goes the distance.
Really?
Sure does.
It has a 83 times optical zoom on it, which I believe you can see right
Wow.
there.
You see little craters on the moon and all sorts of stuff with
What
that.
model
Yeah.
is that? I do have a telescope, but
It's
it would be nicer to
I
have
mean, it's a cool Nikon Coolpix P900, and they also have a P1000. They probably got better ones now, but
Wow.
I've had this since the day they invented it. So I went out and I would go. So my challenge to people is this: when you're going to do this stuff, you know, if you're really serious about it, and you know you're so convinced that it's actually, you know, unmarked planes. Go get one of these things, get yourself a nice tripod, and I want you to do this. I want you to shoot the video of the plane and have ADS-B exchange up and flight radar 24. And then I want you to, as you do that, then you're going to turn your camera and point it right at your phone and then show your current location and then click that flight and see what altitude it's at. And then that way, whenever you come into my Telegram chat, me and Jeff can go and pull up the radiosonde data and tell you, well, that flight was at 38,400 feet. It was in an ice supersaturated region. That is atmospheric science. That is naturally, well, there's nothing natural about a metal fire breathing, you know.
It looks like they're doing it on
tube in this
purpose.
guy.
It's like it is sunny today. It is hot. Like I have a house out in the desert by Palm Springs, and it ruins like the days, and it feels like they're doing it because it's too hot out.
I fucking hate it. I fucking hate it. That's why I got into this. I would go.
Are they doing it because it's too hot out? Because it is hot there, as you know, because you lived in Arizona.
No, there's nothing they can do about it except for diagnose where these water bodies are in the sky and avoid them. Once you start
pursue them.
Can I share screen?
Sure.
Give me 5 seconds and I'll bring this up. And
if I may just give Jeff a shout out, because I've learned quite a lot from Jeff. He's been awesome, and everyone else in the Telegram group's been really good. But he's helped me understand quite a bit about the Lismore floods that we had. But that's another show.
Interesting.
Perhaps.
Yeah. So I've spent probably at this point well over 15 hours on the phone with Jeff. We talk regularly. Especially when I'm feeling down and lonely. Just like, Jeff, buddy. He's like, how you doing, Jim? So this
Chemtrail's got you down, Jim.
Yeah, I got the chemtrail blues. All right, so share screen and entire screen and this. And here we go. So
it did not work, Jim.
It did work.
It did work? I'm not seeing
my shit
it.
is flawless. You have to click it.
Okay, got it.
I think you have to click
my
it.
shit. I have to click what? Oh, fuck. Sorry, it's down there. Yeah. Sorry. Oops.
See? I told you.
Yeah. You are correct. You are correct, sir.
All right, so this is it in a nutshell. Now, this I did not have when I did the Del Bigtree interview. This came to me between shooting the show and it actually coming out. And I had mentioned that Ulrich Schumann had said in 2010, we want less warming, more cooling contrails, predictable for operational planning. I interviewed the head of the FAA's Aviation Climate Change Research Initiative, Dr. Angus I. Halthori. He said, we want more contrail-induced cirrus clouds by day, none by night. Then a guy named George came into my Telegram chat and said, hey, Jim, longtime follower, you're going to love this shit. Threw it in my lap, and it's the first thing that I pinned in my Telegram chat that I did not write. It wasn't my video. I was like, pinning that. Nice. And British Aeronautical Society, or Royal Aeronautical Society, Greener by Design Contrail Avoidance Group. That's what CAG stands for, Contrail Avoidance Group. They were having this meeting, avoiding warming contrails, creating cooling contrails. The Contrail Avoidance Group at first meeting split over forming cooling contrails. Is this geoengineering? I'm going to answer that question for you guys. You know it is. That's why you're asking the question. Half the group was in favor of intentionally flying into an ice supersaturated region like this in order to make cooling contrails. But as far as contrail avoidance goes, this is to the carbon credit, carbon taxes part of things. If they can avoid creating contrails, then they can get cooling credits. They can basically say, look, we know that the contrails we create trap heat at night like a blanket over the planet. That's why it's warmer when it's cloudy at night. So they want to now route flights to avoid making contrails. That's why Google AI is working with American Airlines right now testing this. This is why Ulrich Schumann created the Contrail Cirrus prediction tool back in 2010. So he was, predicting these areas in the sky. And you see there's a gap there. Look at that gap. But this area right here, yes, all of these stripes are going to occur because that's where the water vapor is and the temperature is just right. So basically, they have all of these things to predict. And this actually says August 2005 right here on the picture. But COSIP was designed, back into at least 2005. And we have the same system in our FAA system. It's called the Aviation Environmental Design Toolkit. So in a nutshell, more contrails by day, none by night. Ulrich Schumann, less warming, more cooling contrails, predictable for operational planning. Along comes Ulrich Lohmann with this idea for geoengineering called cirrus cloud seeding or cirrus cloud thinning. Mm-hmm. And they basically said, if we choose the right time, I don't want to read the whole damn quote. Yeah. But anyway, cirrus cloud seeding can be achieved. They can offset the warming of it by seeding is limited to high latitude winters and wait for it, or it is nighttime seeding. So they're basically saying, same thing they're saying here, that if we make cooling contrails during the day and we melt them away at night, then we can geoengineer with pollution that's already making clouds. We just need to kind of reconfigure it to cool the planet. Recent work in the margins suggests cooling contrails are worth investigating, even though decide to sidestep the issue of geoengineering and form a governance subgroup to decide if this is legal or not. But it's worth investigating.
Sidestep that issue.
Yeah, so 2010, Ulrich Schumann, 2017, Rangasai Halthori, 2023 for this one. They've been talking about this for 13 years now. Is it going on yet? I don't know. What I do know is they have a clear plan to do it. And if you combine that with this, longviewer.com, go to the weather modification history timeline. And this is just kind of the punch in the face right here. Let's click artificial clouds. And
this is such a great site. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It's my fun place.
I mean,
isn't it ever?
I know that.
Amazing. You just get lost in there for hours.
Yeah. You have that Brennan clip where he's just like, oh my gosh, geoengineering is so cheap.
We think geoengineering is a great idea at the CIA.
Gosh. Now that I'm head of the CIA, I get the coolest stuff.
I get to play with all the toys.
Killing me. Oh, Lord. There it is. So, yeah, there's this geoengineering with jet fuel. Oh, yeah. Fuel system for vapor trail control.
Nice. When was this patented?
Yeah, this is the patents. All the links and the references are on the page. Right, but this is basically here. I'll send
what
you
decade
the private
do you
chat.
Think?
I could check real quick, but these are recent.
Don't worry about it. Yeah.
How to seed. Use commuter aircraft with their jet fuels doped with aerosol generators like sulfur. Also, the use of UAVs or blimps for aerosols dispersed could be considered. Even tall stacks of coal-fired power plants to geoengineer. And this one literally shows exactly what I'm talking about.
Spraying stuff. It's not extra tanks on the bottom of planes.
They don't need them. Now, that's not to say that the CIA...
But that's when pilots and mechanics and stuff will tell you there's no spraying because there are no sprayers.
They don't need them. I mean,
tailpipe
this entire page is filled with about 30 different peer-reviewed journal entry, publications where they talk about adding sulfur to the jet fuel specifically. That all they have to do is add sulfur to the jet fuel. Now, it's ironic because they, pretty much banned it in diesel fuel for like tractor trailers, and they monitor them for how much sulfur they have. They banned bunker fuel in international ships, which made ship tracks because of the sulfur. But the airline industry, they're like, how about we just ban it on takeoff, but when you get up to altitude, switch to a different fuel that's loaded with sulfur so we can geoengineer. So this one literally says ice supersaturated air, which is
what you're looking for.
The ISSRs. So these are the areas where they would, occur. And in this one, it says 2 jet fuels, 1 fuel tank, Contrail control.
Wow.
Literally.
Wow.
And this one, control unit and method for controlling the supply of a vehicle with multiple fuels.
See, that's such a smoking gun.
I mean, it's just right in your damn face. And clearly that's 2011. You can see that.
Yeah.
But these are the ideas that are being put out there. What else I got here? Biofuels for contrail control. Greenwashing chemtrails explained. That's just me. But yeah, if you look up here, I always put the references on everything.
Yeah,
so when you come down here, you can actually read every single one of these references for all the different ones. But this one in particular, eventually when I get time. I gotta get out of my job. Let's just put it that way. But impacts of aviation fuel sulfur content on the climate and human health. They literally said, and I clicked this, and with my fancy code I wrote, go up to it. Apply high fuel sulfur content at aviation cruise altitude, combined with ultra low sulfur jet fuel, aviation biofuel at lower altitudes, results in reduced aviation induced mortality and increased negative RE compared to the baseline aviation scenario. So they're literally talking about using biofuels, which are ultra low sulfur jet fuels, on takeoff. But then when they get up to altitude, that's this paper, like with all of these freaking, authors. To
reduce the deaths that they are causing.
Because around airports, it produces a lot of black carbon. Black carbon kills people. So all the ultrafine particles on takeoff are killing people around airports. So this is their happy median solution for, geoengineering, but cutting pollution at the ground level. Just get it up there out of sight, and people won't, talk about it, because all they'll talk about is, the goddamn New World Order and their agenda to depopulate everybody and turn the great frogs gay and all of that.
Well, in the defense of the conspiratoids, and, I do consider myself one, it doesn't help when you've got Lyndon B. Johnson talking about he who controls the weather will control the world, does it? So it's sort of like, well... No,
it doesn't.
It's pretty hard not to put agendas to those things, but
there are agendas.
I'm learning the myths. I'm learning the myths from the realities as well. That's important to me. I don't want to be a fool about things,
So I put this on my website in 2015.
Proof. But there is this. This is proof. This isn't like I understand that there's a lot of there are a lot of myths out there. I've never people do you think they're spraying COVID on you? Do you think they're spraying aluminum? I've seen pretty close stuff just spewing out the back of a plane, and it's either the engine or it's like something else, but it's spewing out, and this is proof of what it is.
You can't get more clear than that from National Geographic in 2010. I mean, it's in your face.
Okay, but Jim, I know that you're not naive. You know that these people have agendas and they have the power to make changes, and they can just snap their fingers and change the composition of fuel and flight plans and altitudes, and they do those things. Do you think that there is a big picture here of weather modification now and in the future? Is there a big picture agenda, in your opinion, if you would?
In my newspaper vault, I actually have a Seagram 7 alcohol commercial. And it says, it's got a guy on skis and he's skiing down a mountain. And it says, and it's a quote from a congressman that says something to the effect of, these mountaintops will always be covered by snow and the airlines will provide it. Now, this is like in the 70s. So, yeah, is there some there? Sure. There's a lot of there. There's so many other things. If I were doing my tinfoil hat and just speculating, like, I could tell you all kinds of stuff that would absolutely scare the shit out of you. Probably make me popular and rich. But the activist side of me goes, but what good would that do? Like, if I'm being realistic, I want people, I want to do something about this in my lifetime. I didn't take a train up to Washington, D.C. to testify in front of the EPA for shits and giggles and to make myself popular. It didn't make me popular, okay?
So what should we do? What can we do? What do you suggest?
What we can do is we can educate people on the facts about toxic pollution. Even Rosalind Peterson, and like, people want to hate on anybody who uses the word contrail, but Rosalind Peterson's held up on a pedestal and interviewed by Alex Jones on InfoWars and all these documentaries. She literally said, look, I'm finding all these metals and all of the different rainfall, the water samples from all over the state of California. And I had to say to myself, what could possibly cause all these? And I came to the conclusion it has to be jet fuel. And these contrails are persisting into making clouds. And I was kind of blown away because, I talked to her on the phone multiple times before she passed away. And I hadn't actually watched that clip because it was on InfoWars. I just hadn't seen that thing. But somebody posted in the Telegram chat, and it was, they time-stamped it to a certain part. So I kept listening to the rest from then on. And I was like, damn, I've never heard her say this, but she's saying all the stuff I'm saying right now. Like, why is it crazy when it comes out of my mouth, but it's not crazy when it comes out of her mouth? You
never sound crazy to me.
Well, no, I mean, if you're a chemtard, anybody who says that it's not.
Oh, you sound crazy because you're not because they're spraying barium and on purpose and COVID.
Let me be blunt. When Dane Wigington on the front of his page, and this, I got into this with Graham Hood, and because Graham Hood is a pilot, he's been a pilot for 30 years, and he, caught a lot of flack about, you're killing everybody, and there are people out there praying for planes to collide midair.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, that's bad. I get regular comments on YouTube where people say, we got to start shooting these planes down. I delete any kind of threats of violence.
Sounds like provocateurs.
Yeah. It could be, but guess what? There's a lot of idiots out there.
Yeah,
there really are.
They're provokers. You know what I mean? They're meant to provoke.
But who's doing the provoking? Because when Dane Wigington says contrails do not exist, when on the front page of his website is an entire article that was co-written by Russ Tanner from Chemtrail Global Skywatch that says high bypass turbofan jet engines are incapable of creating contrails. When Graham Hood had him on to interview, Graham said that basically they got to a point where he had to edit out 30 minutes of the interview because they were going nowhere and they were practically just shouting at each other. Dane was shouting over him and refused to hear anything he had to say. And that is contrary to science. That is provably bullshit.
Right.
And that's the number one problem I've had with him from day one, aside from the fact that he sues anybody.
Well, I call that a taint agent. They taint the real story by putting.
I was totally, when you said taint agent, I was like, You mean
That's
like
sounds dirty.
like you mean like a Klingon? I mean,
Yeah. Yes,
you know,
that's the joke. Is that it?
Yeah, he's a dirty son of a bitch. But I don't know whether it's because he's an egomaniac and he doesn't science very well, or because he's a narcissist, he refuses to change his views that he's had for decades. But you cannot, and that's why there's such a disconnect in this community between the contrails are only short lines that disappear, chemtrails stick around. And that's why I say it goes right back to semantics, right back to where we started this interview. So many people are stuck on the word, that they're not, seeing the big picture. And I personally think, I ask myself, anytime there's some bullshit like this going on, who benefits? The airline industry. The airline industry benefits from everybody arguing a false chemtrail narrative that contrails do not exist. There are pumps and pipes in every single plane. And while Graham Hood interviews Dane says, no, I do not believe commercial planes are involved. What the fuck are you talking about? I watched the dimming. You literally have a Airbus A319 with two little pipes sticking out of the back of it, and that's your sole proof that they're chemtrail pipes and pumps. Those are pylon drains, and you can prove that. I have the flight manual for the freaking A319. I was like, damn, bro, I got to figure this one out, because if I don't, I'm going to feel real stupid when I've been saying all along, that the only people doing this is, military or three-letter agencies, not Delta and UPS, things like that. But almost every one of his arguments is easily provable as false. So what I'm left with is, how do I turn people who have been addicted to fear porn into no longer being demoralized and become activists against the aviation industry, which has never been regulated ever? In 1970, they were sued. The state of Illinois and New Jersey sued them for making clouds that blocked out the sun.
I just spent $30 on a newspaper from 1966, which has on the cover the cloud seeding operations of Sydney. I thought it was worth grabbing for a bit of historical value.
Scan it. I'll put it in my newspaper vault.
Cool.
But yeah, we have all the receipts. I've got 5 different newspaper articles on this lawsuit that happened at the time, and they called it smoke pollution of the sky. In 2015, when the EPA was, sued to regulate greenhouse gas emissions, that was only the second time in history that somebody was trying to do something about something coming out of the butt end of a plane. So though they may have other regulations on them as far as their pollution, they tried to sue them in 1970. Nothing was done. It was settled out of court. They tried to sue them in 2015. I tried to get them to say, hey, don't you realize you're violating the Clean Air Act's, the spirit of the law by claiming greenhouse gas emissions hurt people when fucking metal particles, metal nanoparticles is the definition of hurting people? Let me get this straight. You're fucking the same. I'm on a rant now. The same fucking EPA is banning Berkey water filters because they have silver in it, calling it a pesticide. They're calling it a pesticide because it has silver in it, but you're not going to do shit about lead and avgas or any of the metals in the jet fuel that's raining down, or sulfuric acid. None of this shit. You don't care about that. Why? Because technocrats love their damn private jets, and they don't want anybody screwing with that.
As a libertarian, a lot of my listeners are libertarians. Our first vote is not for regulation.
Mine too. I hate the government.
Yeah, I've never found a regulation that I could not say it would be unnecessary in a libertarian society. And actually, historically, property rights in the Western conception of property rights was down to basically the center of the earth and up to heaven. So Trump, I'm not going to get into the Trump story, but you could sell the rights above you. And like Trump built a building. I think that woman was ruled not to have the rights above, but
I know what you're talking about, the case in New York where about they actually have different rights in New York about how much of the air above the ground you actually, you have a certain amount of skyline that you can actually use.
It used to be when I was growing up, my father taught me like this house, we own this piece of land and it's all the way up to heaven. That's our land. So he was like, those planes that go overhead,
they're violating my sovereign airspace. But
and they're
blew my
dropping
mind
stuff on top of us. So
in Arizona,
regulation if they respected your private property rights.
Yeah, so in Arizona, you can't put a well in your own backyard because somebody bought all the water rights underneath your property. That shit is like un-American, alien AF to me.
Un-American you can have. Because that's how all those Okies got rich, is that there was oil under their land.
Yeah, it was under their land. And
their land. And in Pennsylvania too, you sell it under, you have a lot of hayseeds and stuff who have these leases. They don't even have to work because they lease a hole in the back of their property and, the companies come and
they do all the pumping and everything like that.
Yeah, they do everything, and they just give you some money.
I see assholes out here that literally are leasing out their backyard to put a cell phone tower up.
Oh, ow.
I know. That's next level crazy.
Well, I would tell them, like, get your waves off my backyard.
I went and talked to the guy and I said, have you guys had any kind of health issues? He's like, oddly enough, yes. And then we got into it and I explained to them, I said, I don't know how much they're paying you.
Yeah,
but all of what you're describing to me is that. And here's some papers. I printed a whole stack of papers, took them to them, and I said, y'all need to get the fuck out of this house or cancel that contract or something.
Cancel the contract.
But these are the kinds of things like, I heard this funny video. I think Stella, were you the one that shared it to me? No amounts of evidence will ever convince an idiot. And
no, that wasn't me.
Somebody shared it in the Telegram chat, and I swear I damn near died. Because I've been saying...
Story of your life.
Yeah, it is. It really is. In the OG days of Anonymous on 4chan, we had this thing called the rules of the internet. And rule number 13 was... all your carefully laid arguments can be easily ignored. TLDR. So the point being, and I love this one also. I worked in a courthouse for a while as a private guard, and a lawyer told me this joke. He said, I said to the judge, I'm talking to the judge, and I'm like, I don't know what happened there, man. Like, my argument was on point. I had all the evidence. Like, what the hell happened? Like, why did the jury turn, and vote not guilty? And he said, you see, young son, your first mistake was trying to convince people who already had their minds made up. And that is the difference between intelligence and wisdom. As I get older, I get a little wiser, and I realize there are certain people, no matter how much evidence I pile up in front of them, if I drag their ass out in a freaking chokehold in my backyard and I show them the radiosonde data and I show them the Appleman chart and I freaking whip my camera out, I zoom into the tail and I'm like, look, you see this chart? Because they're... the whole time they're going, the earth is fucking flat. I don't know why you're doing this to me. And I'm like, you see that tailpipe? That thing says TA 784. Look, here's it on ADSB Exchange. That is currently at 38,000 feet. The relative humidity is this. The dew point depression and the temperature are within 5 degrees of each other. It should be making fucking clouds. They will never, ever believe. And then at the same time, all this focus on me talking about pollution, they go, well, clearly you're a shill because you're covering up for the secret government programs. And just like what I said to Dell, I said, and I saved this for the end. I always save this for the end because I'd rather you tune out if you're an idiot and you don't have patience and you don't like long form anything, or you probably don't read either. You're one of those dumbasses that reads the headlines and shares them without ever reading the damn article. The CIA, better. Cloud seeding was invented in 1946. Less than 11 months later, it was used to steer a hurricane. Less than 20 years later, it was used as a weapon of war by the CIA. Henry Kissinger, the CIA, the United States Air Force Weather Reconnaissance Division, and the U.S. Navy did cloud seeding over Laos and Vietnam over the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Operation Popeye. Their slogan was "Make mud, not war." They used silver iodide and lead iodide. So on top of being sprayed with all the rainbow agents that are veterans, are now suing over getting compensation, they were sprayed with lead-lined clouds. And that's why you see Forrest Gump up to his waist in water, because they were doing weather warfare. Right at the same time, the CIA was denying Castro rain by causing an artificial drought by making it rain in the Gulf of Mexico before the clouds could reach the island. Mm-hmm. You have Brennan, which you saw, in my timeline, saying this geoengineering idea, it sounds like pretty good and pretty cheap. Meanwhile, the CIA and all of the other three-letter agencies have declared climate change a national security concern. So once they've dubbed it national security concern, then it becomes top secret. So if there is, and I've said this time and time again, if there are any unmarked white planes, or some people even claim that the planes are painted to look like Delta Airlines, but they're actually CIA planes that don't show up on, I don't know. I've never actually seen that. Every single plane I've ever seen shitting on my sky, I was able to track it down, and it was almost always a commercial flight. And I did see military flights, but, I live near Shaw Air Force Base, and McIntyre Air Force Base is right between me and Columbia. So, yeah, I'm going to see military flights occasionally, but I've been able to track down every flight I've ever seen making blankets in the sky, and never, ever seen one that didn't show up on one of the flight radars.
But there have been, and maybe there still are, even though there was those acts that you talked about and the laws from the 70s, private companies that change the weather for farmers or whatever. I know they do it in other countries. I know India gets mad at China for stealing their rain. I know when I was in Russia, they were having a parade. So the rain, there was no rain that day. And they were like, yeah.
Iran, President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad in 2010 and 2011 said European states are stealing Iran's rain. In 2018, Brigadier Gholam Jalali or something like that, I could bring it up, it's on my timeline. He said that Israel and surrounding and other, he said they called out Israel specifically, but Israel and surrounding countries are stealing our clouds. Cloud theft was the term that they used. So what happened to Cuba via the CIA, Iran is claiming since 2010, and again in 2011, and in 2018, they're claiming that people are stealing their weather. Now, does that sound far-fetched? No, because they've been doing that for a very long time. Not only did the CIA do it, the Russians did it after the Chernobyl meltdown. They did a whole lot of cloud seeding to make sure that the nuclear fallout that was headed towards Moscow landed in Belarus. That's what's called overseeding. If you overseed the sky, you're going to cause a massive flood out, and then homeostasis will no longer be occurring Don't use big words, John.
It's not a big.
If you have too many particles and not enough water vapor, then it can't condense and make raindrops. So the idea is you have a certain amount of cloud seeds in the sky and a certain amount of water vapor. For that water vapor to fall on the ground, it has to condense on a cloud condensation nuclei, grow large enough to be too heavy to be held as a gas in aerosol in the sky anymore, and it falls to the ground. So by overseeding, you can flood out that water like they did with Project Nile Blue to the Cubans. The CIA did, like the Russians did with Project Cyclone, where they firsthand accounts said they saw yellow contrails all through the sky. And these were them, basically laying down probably sulfur trails. And you can see it in the fallout charts, exactly where it happened, because you got Chernobyl here, and then you got a whole nother area in Belarus, and I'm thinking to myself, like, how did all that get there? And then I learned, that they were actually doing this to prevent the rain from reaching Moscow. The same is true with Beijing Olympics 2008. They wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to rain on the open air bird's nest stadium. Yeah. So creating artificial droughts, or at least temporary droughts, is also possible. And that's what, and the number one question I get out of people from California is like, why do we have wildfires? And why is it all, why are all our trees dead? And I'm like, because your sky is overseeded. Because you have all of the pollutants coming off the Pacific Ocean from all the international shipping, combined with the smog. I was there when I was 16 years old, and I literally ended up
smoggy now.
I hope so, because I almost ended up on a ventilator.
Yeah, because the people I know who grew up here, I say, do you remember ever seeing chemtrails as a kid? And they're like, we couldn't see the sky when I was a kid.
Yeah. I mean, I remember going into Hollywood, and it's like in a valley, and it was just a black layer.
Yeah, I have a friend with asthma who.
Yeah, and we went to the same water park that Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was at. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I was going down the slide going, I couldn't breathe. But anyway, Cal Water 2015, they did a study, and I was so pleasantly surprised to see a scientist on there who said, her entire presentation was on overseeding the sky and how that affects precipitation, how that affects, cloud formation and all these things. So when cloud seeding is going on in California, plus you have all these highways in the sky, plus you have pollution coming off the Pacific, plus you have military chemicals like biological agent deterrent systems, like the jelly that rained on Washington. These are called bioterrorism remediation systems. It's basically like a jelly to get anthrax out of the air. I don't want to get too creepy. But chaff's another one that's really big in the news right now, at least in the community. I use that with air quotes every time because nobody's actually communing at all. So you have chaff, you have military exercises going off, because Rosalind Peterson famously had a map of all of the U.S. naval warfare programs that go on from Washington to the end of California off the coast. Plus you have all the international shipping tankers riding through that area. All of that's drifting over land. And if you look at satellite on any given day, what you'll see is a whole bunch of clouds about 100 to 200 miles away from California over the ocean, and clear skies all the way over California, because of all of the ships that are literally just docked there. And they're waiting to come into port, and their plumes are going up, overseeding the sky.
Yeah, these are things that are like seven of them equals all the cars on Earth.
Yeah, and now they're running on something called Frankenstein fuel, because they banned bunker fuel, so it's gotten even weirder. The point I'm trying to make is that any topic, if somebody asks me about California drought, if somebody asks me about chemtrails, if somebody asks me about anything, I'm going to go, there is no one sentence answer. There are always multiple factors, especially when you're talking about anything that has to do with the atmosphere, because the atmosphere is complicated AF. And the people who claim to know a lot about it, the people who are modeling it, they will admit to you that cloud aerosol interaction is the greatest unknown in climate science.
So the government isn't in total control of this. Even if they wanted to be, they wouldn't be able to be, in your opinion.
The National Science Foundation did a study on cloud seeding in 2001. It was invented in 1946, and they said, our opinion remains much the same as it did 60 years ago, that cloud seeding has no efficacy. Meaning, you guys don't know what the fuck you're doing. You're gambling with the weather. You have no idea if you made a prediction, you don't know what's going to happen. You could shut rain off temporarily and end up causing a flood several states down. In fact, Irving Langmuir, who was one of the co-inventors of cloud seeding in one of the newspapers that I have, said that they were doing a cloud seeding experiment at one of the Air Force bases, and that he started to watch the floods occur as a result of it, and tried repeatedly to contact the people at the Air Force Base to tell them to turn the seeders off.
Wow.
And was not able to, and that the people who were flooded out should be able to sue for liability. And I've studied court case after court case of people who've tried to sue over weather modification.
This book says that they stopped doing weather mod in the 70s because they feared liability. I assumed that they didn't actually stop. They just
that's Project Storm Fury. So Project Storm Fury was a NOAA project that ran during the 1970s, and they did several different. It lasted multiple years. Let's put it that way. And at the end of it, they concluded that basically we suck at this. There are way too many variables. We really don't have any control over this whatsoever. And in 2008, because Hurricane Katrina, because Barack Obama was elected president, Bill Gates and a bunch of geoengineers got together and came up with the idea, hey, maybe we should try to prevent Hurricane Katrina from happening again under Department of Homeland Security. So they had a Department of Homeland Security hurricane modification workshop. And at that meeting, they came to several determinations, one of which was the same thing that William Gray said in 1976 in his paper, Carbon Dust Absorption of Solar Energy. Use carbon black dust dumped in a hurricane to absorb solar radiation, make heat, because it's black absorbs heat. Right. Dump carbon black into the cold pools of a hurricane to steer it in a different direction.
So it can dump its rain on the ocean instead of on the land?
Yeah, so that was Masha Alamaro from MIT University parroting what William Gray had said in 1976. The point is that when the Department of Homeland Security said, in 2008, they had their hurricane modification workshop, they said things like, we want to do salt seeding, which is those marine cloud brightening boats. We want to do carbon black dust tests. We want to do monolayer films. That's like creating artificial oil slicks. It's called hurricane emasculation. I don't really like that term. And it's basically cutting off the evaporation cycle. So you put an oil slick out there. Stephen Salter has the Salter sink about, pumping cold air from the bottom of the ocean, cold water from the bottom of the ocean up to the surface to cool the surface waters. They came up with all these ideas. The point I'm trying to make is this. From 2005 till 2015, there was a 10-year hurricane drought.
Yeah.
Which was really interesting. Because, that just doesn't happen. It's very rare. Yeah. And then Trump got elected into office, and the first words out of his mouth was, I'm going to cancel the Paris Climate Accord. And what happened that year in 2016? That decade-long hurricane drought ended, and 3 3 big ass hurricanes hit all the rednecks in the South that voted him into office.
Yeah.
So is it a coincidence? Is it a conspiracy theory? I don't believe in coincidences, but climate scientists
Well, there was
are the
Sandy.
ones who,
Yeah.
But Sandy was literally a big rainstorm that just hung out. Hurricane Sandy's special because it also got rid of Occupy Wall Street.
Oh,
Much like...
well, we could just keep going down and down.
I'm gonna leave you with one other really weird one. The COVID virus lab leak coincided with the largest in history protests in Hong Kong for freedom, which abruptly came to an
interesting.
end.
Yes.
And nobody points this out.
Yeah.
I was all over it because I was right in the thick of it. But that's gone. That's all gone. So these big events like this, when you start to look at what's going on and who's pushing back and what disappears as a result of these manufactured crises, was Hurricane Sandy stalled out? Was it controlled to flood out the Occupy Wall Streeters? Seemed like it to me.
It's possible.
It really did put a hamper on things.
Scientifically possible is what we're, that's all that, you won't say anything that isn't scientifically possible. But I definitely, before we wrap, I want to make sure that people know how they can support you and what you were, because I heard you say, if you're listening to somebody who complains about stuff or scares you and doesn't have a plan, then that's useless. So I want to make sure that we tell people what you think is the right plan. I know you have a proposal, the Environmental Modification Accountability Act, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And then also, this work takes a lot of time and effort. And even if people aren't accessing it, they should support it, in my opinion. So I don't know if joining your Substack is the way you want people to support, but both things.
I'll take it any way I get it. Being absolutely blunt. Right now, I'm working 40 hours a week as a private security guard in a government building while, coding all my websites, doing my research, doing interviews, doing everything.
And 2 girls, taking care of your babies.
And I have a 14-year-old, a 7-year-old daughter, and a wife of 25 years.
Yeah. Buckle up on the 14-year-old is all I got to tell you.
The buckle broke
right,
already.
You thought you knew cyclones.
Yeah. But yeah, if you go to, my website or, connect.climateviewer.com has all my things on one spot. So you can check out my maps. You can check out climateviewer.com. It's got a link to my Substack, my YouTube, my BitChute, my Rumble, Odyssey, all that stuff on one page, plus Patreon, PayPal, and the usual. My goal is to, and I don't need much, if I can get to a very small sum, then I'm going to be building a studio in my backyard and doing this full time for the rest of my life. Be
great.
So
it's just great because you're honest, you're smart, you know what you're doing. Our government steals our money. This is my position on it. Absolutely steals our money, puts it, all that floods the zone, as they say, into research that is not used to our benefit. And if there is any benefit to it, it's basically subsidized for corporate purposes. And, they just make sure we don't have enough money to pay for that kind of stuff ourselves. I would much rather be able to choose my own charities, choose my own research with the money that
we don't have lobbyists.
Yeah. And we're never going to. And it's not like I don't need regulation. I need freedom. But we've got to support this in addition to that heavy tax burden.
We need something similar to the, if you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you. So as a
you don't have access to real science.
as a rugged individualist and a person who abhors government, the further it gets away from my house, the less likely it is to be relevant to my life.
Yeah.
So I like local government because it keeps things running. My city's just fine. Well, at least in my city,
you can keep an eye on it.
for the most part. You know, you're going to have corruption everywhere, but at least it's, 60,000 people. You can't do that much damn damage.
Yeah, and there is like physical accountability. You can wag a finger,
Oh, there's more than wagging fingers around here. This is the South.
Perfect.
But yes, I have the Environmental Modification Accountability Act, which is a way to update the Environmental Modification Convention of 1978, which is the weather warfare ban of 1978. They never made any way to actually catch somebody doing it. So on this issue of chemtrails, I'll put it to you bluntly. Know the science, know when you're actually seeing planes making clouds, and that pollution should be making clouds because that's what naturally occurs when you put a bunch of metals into water vapor at that altitude. And then if they're not in that area and they're flying at 12,000 feet and they're leaving white plumes of rope, which are cutting off and on, then you can go,
definitely,
that shit should not be happening. That's called rogue geoengineering, clandestine geoengineering. But let's be real. Everybody always focuses on the word geoengineering when it comes to airplanes. If it's happening in the troposphere, it's fucking weather modification because clouds are part of the weather report every day. Is it partly cloudy? Mostly cloudy? If it's cloudy, if it's cloudy, that's why cloud cover is the hardest thing to predict for weather, any of these weather prediction services, because they really have no clue on a given day what it's going to be like.
Well, when it's generated by the planes, I don't like it either way. I mean, I like flying in planes when I need to go somewhere, but it's a problem, and I'm not.
I get sick every time I fly.
I can't. Well, it sounds like we're going to get sick just even if you're not doing the actual flying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the numbers are there. I mean, just the studies on the pollution fallout and human mortality, not to mention, just throw out all the dead people around airports because they're getting it way worse.
Honestly, we subsidize air travel. We subsidize it greatly. And you can the subsidies start with wars for oil. The subsidies start at that level. The subsidies start on building the infrastructure. So if these things actually had to be paid for from scratch in the free market, there would be a lot less of it. And we would spend our resources in other probably more pleasant ways with our families and such. So I'm not looking for some command and control economy here. I always just like to look back and say, okay, what is starting this, and what freedoms have been curtailed, what money has been stolen to foster this thing that I don't approve of and that violates my rights.
So I'm all for the free market too. You know what I mean? I don't like regulations either.
But this isn't the free market. They're hijacking our money and our rights.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of a free market. I like, the original idea that people would, buy and choose based on
mom and pop entrepreneurship.
Yeah. I mean, Walmart killed all, but video killed the radio star, and and Walmart killed the local,
by government.
And Walmart killed all the local, mom and pop shops.
Starbucks killed coffee.
Yeah, I don't drink that shit. But
it's also
what did you say, Stella?
It's also the West propping up places like China so they could catch up, and just people buying unnecessary crap because we've been told to consume. There should be, I've always thought for years there should be a crap tax, and I'm not trying to say there should be more tax, but I don't know, something that goes towards cleaning up the plastics out of the ocean or something. Just, a rating system of useful object versus unuseful object, like 1 to 3, 1 to 5, something like that.
Well, you could also base it on
the they're buying, I think.
You could base it on longevity because, I mean, whereas, there was a time where you bought a table and that table was given to your children, and your children, you got your great grandma's table. Okay. I understand everybody can't buy wood. I mean, like real wood, not that press board shit. But the more likely for it to end up in a landfill, the more expensive it should be, not the other way around. If something can be,
Yes,
I mean,
right.
I always heard reduce, reuse.
And that's probably
Recycle.
all subsidized also. The price of trash is probably not what you're you're not internalizing the externalities of that stuff.
We used to actually sell our trash to China. That was the largest.
Oh yeah, they did that on 9/11.
The largest export in America used to be trash. That's what we made. We made trash and we sold it to China. But now China's got enough of its own trash that it doesn't need to buy our trash anymore, and it can get trash cheaper from other places. This is, I mean, it's mind-boggling, but it's true.
Really?
The highest export that the United States made money on was trash.
That's so sad. And then they also probably movies, which are also trash.
So back to solutions. The Environmental Modification Accountability Act, that's a freaking UN law. And the UN is useless. So, yes, I want to update that law, and hopefully they'll actually be able to do something with it. But I don't trust them either. And at the end of the day, our federal government has the Weather Modification Reporting Act of 1972 and the Weather Modification Policy Act of 1976. Right. Neither one of these are up to date or cut out for the types of technologies that are being deployed like today, like lasers steering lightning bolts, like, cloud ionization methods where they're actually using negatively charged ions to, move, to do cloud seeding, using sound and acoustic and electromagnetic frequencies to, quote, steer atmospheric rivers. When you're talking about the monumental level of weather modification activities going on today with extremely complex systems, all these laws need to be updated, but they need to include what the scientific community refers to as accidental geoengineering or inadvertent weather modification. Mm-hmm. That not only are the intentional experiments covered where they must be reported, and not just on a sheet of paper to NOAA, there must be some kind of vetting process. There needs to be somebody actually looking at the results of these experiments people are saying they're going to do. Because when Idaho Power Company turns its cloud seeding generators on, and then all of a sudden there are floods downwind from those cloud seeding generators, the people in those states should know. And I heard a weather forecaster saying, every year about this time, there's floods from the Rocky Mountains to the Mississippi River. And that's because we had an unusually large snowpack this winter. When that artificial snowpack was created by ground-based cloud seeding generators that operate through October or March of every year to put fake snow on top of mountains so that when in the spring it melts and it fills all the canals and rivers that feed the entire West Coast. So you can't claim that the flood damage done by the abnormally large snowpack in the Rocky Mountains wasn't caused by companies profiting from it.
Intentionally.
That is intentional. I mean, it's the big dude. If I were a solicitor general in one of these states that was getting flooded, I would sue the loving shit out of those people because this is a easily provable case. You just literally grab the NOAA report. Look, Your Honor, they were covering the mountains with artificial snow all damn year long. And I'm going to bring up my phone real quick. And this fucking meteorologist said that the floods are bad because of all the an abnormally large snowpack, which they were paid to make.
Is reported, or you are saying it should be reported?
It needs to be reported to the public in real time.
Got it.
Not right now. The law just basically states that you need to fill out a sheet of paper and send it to NOAA. Yeah. There's one before you start. And then there's a second form, which is called an intermediate and final report. And that's it. It's 2 sheets of paper.
Yeah, so that's advertent geoengineering.
So when Make Sunsets, the Luke Eisman and Andrew Songs.
Yeah, I know, it's so crazy.
these two fools decided they were going to geoengineer throwing balloons in the air. They wrote on there, start date 2023, end date 22/23.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
200 years from today. They wrote that on the damn sheet of paper. It's almost like they're giving middle fingers to NOAA and the Weather Mod Reporting Act by signing. And
I also thought it was very interesting that the handwriting looked like a 3-year-old was just looking.
Oh my God. My 7-year-old daughter's cursive is better than Luke Eisman's freaking handwriting. It is scribbled on there. Literally, like somebody came up to him and was like, just to cover, a little CYA, could you fill this out real quick? And he's like, bro, turn around. And he put it on his back.
Give me a crayon.
He's drunk and he fucking.
It's got a crayon.
He's like, wait, what's the end date? Put 200 years on it. Fuck it. That's fucking hilarious. Because I'm going to get a Neuralink and we're going to still be doing this, man, forever, bro. It is insane. It is insane. And the fact that was actually submitted and nobody at NOAA or the Department of Commerce or anybody, it's Public Law 92-205, nobody that's in charge of this whole system took a look at that sheet of paper and went, these fuckers are crazy. So originally, a friend of mine, Renette, sent them. She was like, and they, NOAA approved this. And then I had to explain to her, I was like, no, they don't even approve it. You know what I mean? Like they don't give a shit. They just, the law literally says, just tell us you did it and give us a general time that you did it. That's not acceptable today. In a day and age where we have IoT, the Internet of Things and all this stuff, the cloud seeding generators themselves are hooked to freaking cell phone towers and satellites and all this stuff. They're remotely operated. They can literally report themselves and show a real-time map. Hey, this storm, this storm front is coming through. And this would be good for the public who's worried about, damages from weather modification. And it would benefit forecasting models and scientists who study meteorology because they'd be able to go, all right, there are cloud seeding generators turning on right now. Let's watch the storm. Yeah, let's watch the storm and see what happens. And then they can follow it and see what the morphology of it is. Did it precipitate on the mountain? How much more of it precipitated downwind? Were there any adverse effects? Did a tornado spin off of that storm after it finally migrated across? Were there mega freaking, softball hail dropping, on cornfields in Omaha by the time they got there? Did it go on to make a freaking blizzard in New York after it passed over the Great Lakes? Because guess what? You seeded it. It then migrated over the Great Lakes and then it, dumped a blizzard over here. I've seen this happen myself just using, standard maps and knowing that, we found an internal government document, one for Colorado, that actually showed when the cloud seeding generators were on and off. And only me and Dominic, we kept this top secret. And because we wanted to know. And, we were just tracking this thing. Yeah. And I finally made a video about it, and they immediately took that bitch down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they didn't know that, it was out there. Yeah. So now it's out there, and people know about it. And obviously, the minute I talk about it, people flood to it, because they want to now get it on their YouTube channel. You wouldn't believe the number of hawks that steal my shit. And,
you have so much credibility because you simply will not just parrot the super scary chemtrail stuff that when you are talking about intentional and covert and even, mercenary weather modification, and you've got smoking guns, it bears a tremendous amount of credibility.
Well, I knew that I was onto something when I got to the Weather Modification Conference in 2019 or 2018, and I walked up to, God, what's his name? from Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Can't remember his name right now. That's sad too. It's really sad that I can't. I'm drawing a blank because he knew my name.
Wow.
I was like Daniel Rosenfeld.
Wow.
Just like that.
Wow.
Like I had a picture of his face. I was like,
He knew
conversation
your
we
name.
had, and I was like, "Hey, how you doing, Jim?" I was like, he said, "You're Jim Lee." I was like,
Are you like the guy who chases the Bilderbergers around?
"Oh
You know,
no!"
like
I
there's
mean,
always a guy who's like around
you know,
Bilderberger. with the
I mean,
hat on.
well, you're
They
talking about like,
warn you, like, don't talk to this guy, and he's like
Yeah,
yelling
like-
over the fence. What are you guys doing in there?
that's Mark Dice. Yeah, Mark Dice going to
So-
Bohemian Grove, like shouting
yeah,
over the
yeah,
fence
yeah.
and stuff like that.
So no, so he knew your name, huh?
Yeah, and several people did. Like I was really
Were they
surprised. Like,
respectful?
yeah, every single one of them.
Wow, that's
When I saw William Cotton, I was like, "You're William Cotton," and he looked at me and he said, "You're Jim Lee."
right.
I was like, "Shut up!" And he's like,
So what did the
"No
Hebrew guy
kidding."
say to you, Dad? The Hebrew
And
University?
William Cotton was
Yeah.
part of Project Storm Fury, the book you held up.
Yeah.
And I looked at him, and he's also the guy who said use commuter airplanes with their fuels doped with sulfur with aerosol generators. That's the same guy. So I specifically wanted to talk to him about that, but I also knew that he worked on Project Storm Fury. And so in the interview, and you can see all of these interviews, like I interviewed the United States Naval Research Lab. I asked him about HARP. The woman turned red and she said, "We don't talk about HARP anymore." There's some priceless shit in there. We got kicked out of the conference right before, because we were having lunch, and I saw a little fucking spy sitting 2 tables over listening to me and my videographer. And I said, "All right, let's go hit up the NQTEL table," because that's
of course, it's a CIA.
I was like, that's the CIA, and they run the Tromso ionospheric heater, and I want to ask about that shit. And then magically, before we could, we were eating pizza, we went to get up, they came in, accused Jerry Day, my producer, my videographer. He's actually an Emmy Award-winning videographer, and he talks about microwave dangers from 5G and smart meters and stuff like that. So he was actually videotaping everything that I'm there with the microphone. I've never done this in my life, but handle it like a pro. So me and Jerry are talking. They accused Jerry of recording in one of the presentation rooms. And we were like, I was like, no. Jerry started to get really upset because he's like,
it's a lie.
The fuck I did. I did not do that. I said, we will go into your room right now.
Yeah,
lay all of our tapes.
All of the tapes.
We'll put all our tapes out on the ground, on the table. You can go through them individually. We will review it with you. This did not happen.
Yeah.
And they basically said, no, we don't care. We know that you did this. You leave now. And then a freaking security guard started walking towards me. And as a security guard and as a person who's practiced martial arts since I was, 10 years old, I looked at him. I said, "Stop." I looked at him and I said, "Stop." and he stopped. And then I looked back at the guy. I said, "You sure you want to do this?" And the guy's like, "Leave now." I was like,
wow.
I said, I looked at the guard and he started walking towards me again. I said, "We're going to leave." I said, "You put your hands on me, I'm breaking your fucking arm." Just a clear warning, because I understand my constitutional rights. I'm going to break your fucking arm.
Favorite fictional character on Earth is Hank Hill, because he's a nerd who kicks ass.
And he really loves propane.
How is propane for the old atmosphere?
I don't know, but I wish you goddamn kids would quit whacking off in
God dang.
yeah.
So anyway,
whacking off in my camper.
Ass, man, I respect that so profoundly. It's like, I mean, love that.
I take it pretty seriously. Like, when you've got a katana sitting on your desk, because you really never leave home without it. But I don't want to be surprised. Like somebody comes,
you never stay home without it.
I mean,
that's not a knife.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Nice.
Crocodile Dundee ain't got shit on this. This is my Dotunaki katana.
What we have to do now.
Super freaking sharp.
we have to establish that we will be doing this again, and that Stella is going to set the agenda for the next conversation, because she's down there in the trenches on Telegram with y'all. What is the Telegram channel?
T.me/climate viewer chat. Climate viewer chat, all one word.
All right. So that's where you can circle this up. Can I get we had a lot of fun, Jim. Will you come back?
Yeah, definitely. I did have fun.
That was
It's
super
been unreal.
fun. Yeah, so fun. So I'm going to hit the outro. I want to thank everybody for listening, and thank you guys so much for coming. Is there anything that we missed, Jim?
Oh, I just want to say that this message has been brought to you by the Illuminati, who bought the finest double wide trailer in all of Sumter, South Carolina. So,
That's why you can kick
we
ass
at the
with little
Illuminati
trailer.
believe that our Earths are flat and that chemtrails are real.
I can see it right behind you. The Earth is flat. Come on. You can see it.
I mean,
Approved by the Gates Foundation.
what they don't realize
By
is
the
that
Gates Foundation. You're a ball earther.
Well, he's got both avenues covered there, so smart man.
somebody, one of my fans actually made this for me, and I'm super proud of it. Kept it forever.
Let's
A
see what
spray
it is.
can and it's got a little ball right here, and my climate viewer eyeball on
Nice.
the little dragon. And I was born in the year.
nice.
I was born in the year of the dragon,
Yeah, that's the
1976.
Earth. Yeah, that's it. That's what's really
Yeah.
going on.
This is
turtles
this
all
is
the way
this
down,
is the way it
dragons
really
all the
goes.
way up.
This is the sun up here on my little round Earth.
I just wanted to say thank you very much, Monica, for including me. This is like two of my favorite brains in the atmosphere. So thank you very much for beaming me on board. I've had a ball.
I
I've
just
been
I
wanting
wanted
to
to
do a
see
show with you,
you on
Stella.
camera, Stella.
No, we have to go to Australia.
see
And
me
even
right
said that. I was like, I'll go to Australia. She's like, I'm busy. It's like, come on.
That's just
serious.
not right.
Come on. If I actually go to Australia, we can't face to face. But anyway,
Having
we'll
my
see. I'll
burger
put
adjusted
that
as we
in
speak.
All right,
thanks,
my
guys.
friends. I'm gonna wrap this up. Hang on a sec. Don't leave until I say so. Bye, everyone.